The night began with a kind of nervous excitement that neither Evan nor Lily could fully name. Their Seattle apartment was small, but it always felt warm when the lights were low and the windows caught the glow of the city. Lily moved through the living room quickly, adjusting the cushions, wiping the coffee table, checking the candles even though they were already lit. She wasn't usually this tense before guests arrived, but tonight had a different energy. Evan kept watching her, noticing the way her breath caught each time she stopped moving, like she was keeping something to herself. He leaned against the doorway and said, "You've cleaned the same table 4 times." She laughed, but it sounded thin. "I just want the night to go well." Her words were simple, but the worry behind them wasn't. It wasn't about the food or the apartment or even the candlelight. It was something else, something she didn't want to say out loud. This dinner had started as a harmless idea, chance to reconnect with another couple, maybe make new friends. Noah was Evan's old coworker, the kind of man people trusted right away. He was steady, kind, and thoughtful in a quiet way. Emily was the opposite, soft, warm, and openly expressive. She could compliment the simplest things, like the color of a wall or the smell of a candle, and somehow make a person feel special. A few weeks earlier, Lily had suggested inviting them for dinner. "We don't spend enough time with other couples," she had said. "Maybe they're the type of people we'd get along with." Evan agreed instantly. He liked Noah, and he knew Lily would like Emily. What he didn't expect was the strange tension building inside his own home before the doorbell even rang. When it finally did, the sound echoed through the apartment like a spark. Lily froze for a second, fixing her hair one last time. Evan opened the door, and the warmth of the hallway light spilled in along with their guests. Emily hugged Lily immediately, a long, gentle hug that surprised even Lily. Noah stepped inside with a calm smile, carrying a bottle of wine and looking around the apartment with genuine appreciation. His gaze lingered on small details, as if he was trying to understand the story of their home. From the first moments, the room felt brighter. Not loud, just charged, as if something important was shifting beneath the surface. They sat down for dinner quickly. The conversation flowed faster than the wine. The 4 of them laughed about work problems, childhood memories, and the unpredictable Seattle weather. But for every light moment, there were soft, emotional shadows underneath. Evan noticed it first in Lily. She laughed easily, but there was a spark behind her eyes he hadn't seen in a while, something alive, curious, open. And sometimes, when Noah spoke, her eyes lingered on him as if she was trying to understand something she hadn't before. He didn't feel threatened. It wasn't attraction. It was more like recognition, as if Noah said things Lily had been waiting for someone else to verbalize. His steadiness, his attentiveness, his way of asking questions like he truly wanted the real answer. On the other side of the table, Emily seemed drawn to Evan in a similar but different way. She asked him about his dreams, not just his job. She asked him what he loved, not what he did. Her questions weren't flirtatious, they were emotional, gentle, almost therapeutic. She listened as if every word mattered. The emotional temperature in the room rose without anyone intending it. Nothing inappropriate was said. No boundary was crossed. But feelings unspoken, unexpected began taking shape by the time they finished their main course. The air felt thick with unspoken truths. Maybe it was the candles or the soft music, or the way the 4 of them sat closer than before. But something had changed. They weren't acting like for people who had recently met. They were acting like people who had been waiting to tell someone how they truly felt about life, about love, about themselves. Then dessert came, and so did the moment that changed the night. They were eating warm apple crumble when Emily suddenly put her fork down and said in a soft voice, "Isn't it strange how some people make you feel seen the moment you talk to them?" The words would have been harmless if she had looked at her husband when she said them. But she didn't. She looked at Evan. The room went still. Lily's hand tightened around her fork. Noah's eyes flickered between everyone, reading emotions like pages in an open book. Evan felt heat rise up his neck. He didn't know what to say. Emily looked embarrassed for only a second, But then her expression softened, as if she had simply spoken a truth she had never meant to hide. Noah leaned back in his chair with a slow breath. He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised. It was almost as if he understood her in a way that came from years of quiet, honest marriage. Lily's voice broke the tension. "Maybe we should all just talk," she whispered. But her tone wasn't accusing or sharp. It was tired. Vulnerable, Noah set his glass down. "Talk about what?" Lily didn't look at anyone directly. She stared at her dessert as if it held answers. "Our lives," she said softly. "How we feel. What we've been missing. I don't know. It just feels like tonight. Something is waking up in all of us." Emily looked down, twisting her napkin. Noah kept staring at Lily as if waiting for her to continue. Evan reached for her hand under the table, but she pulled away, not coldly, just gently. There was no jealousy in the room. No anger, only emotion, heavy, confusing, human. Lily finally met Evan's eyes, her voice trembling. "I didn't realize how disconnected I've been feeling lately," she said quietly. "Not from you, just from myself." Her honesty hit him harder than he expected. He wanted to comfort her, but she wasn't done. And tonight she continued. "I saw something I've been missing. Confidence, curiosity. That feeling of being interesting again." Emily let out a slow breath. "I understand that," she said. "I've been feeling invisible too. Not because of Noah, just because I forget to open up. Tonight reminded me of parts of myself I haven't shared in a long time." Noah nodded, rubbing his thumb against the side of his glass. "These things happen in long relationships," he said calmly. "People grow. Sometimes together, sometimes apart. And sometimes another perspective brings something emotional to the surface." The tension in the room didn't feel dangerous anymore. It felt honest. The four of them weren't flirting. They weren't searching for attention. They were all confronting parts of themselves that had been quiet for too long. And this dinner, just a simple shared meal, had somehow brought those feelings to the surface. Evan was the last to speak. "I don't want you to feel invisible, Lily," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I never wanted that." Lily closed her eyes for a moment, breathing slowly, as if letting his words sink in. For a long time, no one said anything. They all sat silently, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint noise of distant cars outside. It felt like the whole world had paused to let the four of them breathe. The night didn't turn chaotic. No one argued. No one stormed out. But the emotional shift was unmistakable. Things hadn't spiraled into something dangerous. They had simply revealed truths none of them were ready to face. And as the final minutes of the evening continued, each person at the table realized something quietly startling. Every one of them had come to this dinner carrying a secret they didn't even know they had. A longing, a fear, a hope, an emptiness, a desire to feel alive again. What they would do with those emotions, none of them knew yet, but they all sensed one thing with absolute certainty. This night was not going to be forgotten, not ever. After the tension of dessert, the room seemed quieter, yet heavier with feelings that none of them had expected. The four of them sat around the table, each lost in their own thoughts, trying to understand what had just unfolded. Evan could feel Lily's hand near his, resting on the edge of the table. It wasn't held, but it was close enough for him to feel her warmth, her hesitance. She wasn't angry. She wasn't upset. She was contemplative, vulnerable. And that vulnerability made him realize how much he had missed the depth of her emotions lately. Emily, sitting across from him, was twisting her napkin between her fingers, her eyes glimmering with a faint light. Evan noticed that she seemed nervous but honest, like she wanted to say something but wasn't sure where to start. Noah, meanwhile, was calm as ever, observing everyone with a quiet intensity. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush. He simply waited, as if he understood that tonight required patience, that it required listening more than speaking. Breaking the silence, Emily finally spoke, her voice low and soft. "I've realized I've been lonely," she admitted. Not because Noah isn't here for me, but because I rarely open up. I keep things inside thinking they're not important. But tonight, it felt different. Being here, seeing all of you, I felt something I can't explain. Her words were simple, yet they resonated through the room. Evan felt a sudden weight in his chest, an ache that was neither attraction nor guilt. Just a recognition of human connection, raw and undeniable. Lily looked at Emily, her eyes reflecting empathy and a quiet understanding. "I know exactly what you mean," she said, almost whispering. "I've felt invisible too. Not because of Evan. I love him. But sometimes I forget how to feel alive in my own skin." Evan's hand instinctively reached for Lily's, but she didn't pull away this time. Instead, she let him touch her, and the contact felt grounding. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It was reassurance, a reminder that they were together, that they were safe in this moment of honesty. Noah finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "I think this evening is teaching us something important," he said. "Not about each other, but about ourselves. We all have feelings we ignore, parts of our lives we hide. And sometimes it takes a simple dinner, a conversation to bring them to light." Lily nodded slowly. "I never realized how much I needed this," she admitted. "Not another couple, not new friends. Just honesty, connection, feeling seen again." Her gaze found Evan's, and he saw a softness that hadn't been there in months. "I want us to remember this feeling. I want to hold on to it." Emily smiled faintly, her nervousness fading. "Me too. I think we all do." Her eyes met Noah's briefly, and she squeezed his hand gently. He smiled back, acknowledging her emotions without judgment, simply validating them. Evan looked at all four of them sitting together, realizing that tonight had not spiraled into chaos as he had feared. It had evolved into something quieter, something emotional. A night where every person confronted parts of themselves that they usually kept hidden, and yet the room was not heavy with sadness. It was heavy with honesty, with the weight of shared humanity. The conversation continued naturally after that, flowing like a river finally finding its course. Noah shared a story from his early career about a failure that had humbled him, making everyone laugh and empathize simultaneously. Emily spoke about her love for painting and how she often neglected her own creativity because of routine responsibilities. Lily confessed how she had recently abandoned a hobby she loved simply because she didn't feel she had time for herself. Evan shared memories from his youth that he had never mentioned before, things that made the others smile, nod, and sometimes sigh in recognition. It was simple, but extraordinary. For adults, sharing truths, laughing, and reflecting. Each word carried a subtle emotional weight, a gentle reminder of their own hidden feelings. And as the night went on, Evan noticed a shift in Lily. She leaned closer to him, not in a romantic sense, but in a way that showed trust, a quiet intimacy of shared space and shared vulnerability. Her eyes were open, her smile soft, and she seemed lighter than she had in weeks. Emily, too, seemed transformed. She wasn't just polite or friendly. She was present, attentive. Her laughter was easy, her words careful but sincere. Evan realized she wasn't trying to charm anyone. She was simply being human, and that honesty made everyone feel more comfortable. Noah, always steady, guided the conversation without dominating it. He asked questions that encouraged reflection without forcing answers. "What's something you've missed about yourselves?" he asked gently. It was a simple question, but it prompted a flurry of thoughts, admissions, and small confessions. Each person shared something private, a fear, a regret, a longing. And each admission was met with understanding rather than judgment. By the time the coffee and tea were served, the atmosphere had changed entirely. It was no longer about appearances or casual conversation. It was about connection, emotional intimacy, and recognition. No one flirted, no boundaries were crossed, but something profound had happened. They had opened themselves to each other in a way that rarely occurs in everyday life. Evan noticed that Lily had tears in her eyes, not sadness, not disappointment, but a quiet relief. She reached for his hand, this time firmly, holding it as if to anchor herself in the reality of their shared life. "I didn't realize how much I needed to be reminded of this," she said softly. "Of us. Of me. Of life." Emily nodded in agreement. "Sometimes the simplest moments teach us the most," she said. "And sometimes honesty is more powerful than any plan or expectation." Noah's gaze swept across the room, calm and reflective. "Tonight was a reminder," he said, "that we can't ignore our emotions. We can't hide the parts of ourselves that need to be seen. And when we finally allow ourselves to feel and share, even in small ways, it changes everything." The room grew quiet again, but this time it wasn't tense. It was reflective, almost serene. Each person contemplated the emotions that had surfaced, understanding that they had been given a rare gift, a night of emotional clarity. They had faced truths about themselves and recognized similar truths in others. Evan thought about Lily, her vulnerability, her honesty, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He realized how often he had taken her emotions for granted, assuming that because they were together, everything was understood. Tonight had reminded him that love is not just about proximity or shared routines. It's about seeing each other fully, listening to each other fully, and holding space for emotions, even uncomfortable ones. Lily, sensing Evan's understanding, leaned into him slightly, closing her eyes briefly. She felt heard. She felt safe. She felt alive. And that was a revelation in itself. Emily and Noah stood to leave eventually, the night growing late. But as they gathered their coats and bags, the warmth of the evening lingered. There were no awkward goodbyes, no tension, just a gentle acknowledgement of the connection they had shared and the truths that had come to light. Evan opened the door for them, and Emily smiled softly. "Thank you," she said simply, "for letting us be part of something real tonight." Noah nodded. "It was meaningful, a night we won't forget." When the door closed, Evan turned to Lily. She was leaning against the doorframe, exhausted but smiling. "I didn't expect tonight to shake me like this," she admitted. He took her hand, holding it firmly. "Sometimes things get out of control in the best way," he said. "Tonight didn't go wrong. It went deep. It reminded us of what matters." Lily leaned against him, letting the emotions of the night settle around them. She felt lighter, freer, and more connected, not just to Evan, but to herself. The evening had started as a simple plan to invite another couple over, but it had ended as a quiet awakening. A night of reflection, vulnerability, and understanding. Evan kissed the top of her head gently. "We'll hold on to this feeling," he said. "No matter what happens, we'll remember tonight." And in that moment, the weight of unspoken words lifted. The connection they had shared, the truths revealed. The empathy and understanding, they were theirs to keep. The night had not been about danger, temptation, or chaos. It had been about life, love, and emotional honesty. And that, they realized, was far more profound than any ordinary evening could ever be, as they finally turned off the lights and prepared to sleep. The echoes of laughter, soft confessions, and honest conversations lingered in the apartment. Each of them knew that something had shifted inside themselves, inside their relationships, and inside the bonds they had formed that night. It was a night that had started with a simple invitation and ended with a quiet, lasting revelation. A night where hearts were opened, emotions were shared, and each person left a little changed. And as they closed their eyes, the thought lingered. Sometimes life doesn't get out of control. It simply reveals what's been there all along, waiting to be seen, felt, and understood.